In this video, we're going to look at an introduction for task 1 of the IELTS writing test. If you remember, last week we looked at this task. It's, of course, 2 line graphs, and we also have the task statement that was given to us. We looked at how we would structure a full answer in the last video with 4 paragraphs: the introduction, the overview, and then 2 detailed paragraphs. So all I want to do really in this video is show you how I would write an introduction. I want to keep it quite simple, so this video shouldn't really take too long. Although if you have a look at this task, you can see that the task statement is quite long, and of course we have 2 line graphs in this question. So the introduction is going to be a bit longer than a standard introduction. But all we really need to do in our introduction is paraphrase that task statement. Now, the task statement you can see there is pretty long. It's just basically describing what you can see in those 2 graphs, and most of the time that's all you really need to give a good introduction is the information in that task statement. Now, there are times where you can use what is in the graph to maybe add a little bit of information that the task statement doesn't give, but you're not really going to be describing any details or trends or changes or any numbers in the introduction. It's really just taking that task statement and rewriting it or paraphrasing it. So we need to be changing some of the vocabulary and maybe also some of the structure of that sentence as well to show that we really understand it quite deeply and we can write it in our own way using our own vocabulary. At the same time, though, you don't want to be kind of afraid of using some of the vocabulary in that task statement. I often find students, when they first start paraphrasing, they think they have to change every single word in that task statement, and they'll often try to use synonyms that they really don't understand, and kind of the paraphrasing will sound a bit weird and clunky and a bit unnatural. So whatever synonyms you're using, you've got to be really confident with. And if you're not confident with the word that you're replacing another word with, then just keep the word the same. It's not a big problem. One other approach you can have really is to change the form of the word as well. That's another option. But enough talking. What I need to do now is show you the introduction. And you can have a look at kind of what I've done in my introduction where I'm paraphrasing this task statement. And of course, I'll point out some of the things that are really good that you should be trying to apply to the introductions that you're writing for task 1 of the IELTS writing test. So let's have a look. Here is the introduction, and like I said, it is quite long. It's longer than your average introduction because we're describing 2 graphs. And of course, the task statement is quite long as well. Now, hopefully you're gradually noticing some of the things that we've done here. Of course, there's 2 parts of this sentence. One part is about the first line graph and one part is about the second line graph, and that's how we've divided this sentence. Slightly different from the task statement. Of course, they group them together in the task statement. In the task statement it says the charts below, but of course here you can see we've written the first line graph, and then in the second part of the sentence we have and the second line graph. This is an approach you can have to writing introductions that have more than 1 graph. And it's a way of dividing it up and making it nice and clear. You can also see after that the verb has changed from the verb used in the statement. The task statement uses the verb show. Well, of course, here you can see we've used the verb compare. The first line graph compares. Of course, in the second part of the sentence, we've got a different verb as well, combined into a phrase, gives information about. The second line graph gives information about. Remember, it's all about kind of showing the examiner variety, and the fact that we can paraphrase, and we've done that quite well here. There's no repetition of verbs, and it's quite well chosen here as well. Well, of course, we are comparing in that first graph because we have 3 different household appliances that we are comparing. So that's a good way to begin here, nice and clear, and we are paraphrasing. We haven't changed any of the grammar really so far. I know a lot of students like to write things like the given bar chart maybe, or the given line graph, so they can change a little bit of the grammar there, but I really don't think there's any need to do that. We need to keep the beginning nice and simple and nice and clear. But then if you look at the first part of that sentence, that introduction, you can see here we have changed the task statement quite a lot. Of course, the task statement says the changes in ownership of electrical appliances. Well, here we've changed that to the percentage of homes that had 3 different household appliances. So there we go. You can see, okay, we haven't got the word changes, but we have got the word percentages. Now, we've actually taken that from what we can see in the graph there, because we can see that there are percentages. So we've kind of added information that we can see there from the graph, but nothing too specific. And then instead of using the word ownership, we've said the percentage of homes that had. Well, to have something is to own something. Of course, we're using the past tense here because it is in the past, right? That had 3 different household appliances. So, of course, here we're, rather than using electrical appliances, we've used household appliances. We're kind of mixing up information that we can actually see from the graph here, because of course in the graph you can see the word households, but we've used that as a compound noun with appliances, and it makes sense. We've also added the years straight away here. Of course, in the task statement that's right at the end, but we've added it to this first part of the sentence here and said from 1920 to 2019. We've used a slightly different time expression there. Rather than using between 1920 and 2019, we've got from and to. And this is a nice way to change that up, a nice simple way to remember there. Now, of course, we haven't finished because we've got to go on to the second line graph. And we mentioned already, of course, that's the way we're kind of introducing the second graph. We're not joining this information together like it is joined together in the task statement. So here we've got and the second line graph. And of course, like I said, that phrase gives information about. Another nice phrase to remember, to paraphrase, kind of often in the task statement, you'll have the verb show. Well, this is another way to paraphrase that. Gives information about. Then, of course, we've changed it quite a lot here. Okay, it says, of course, in the task statement, it says amount of time spent doing housework. Well, it's not that different, but we have changed it a bit here. We've said the amount of time spent on housework. So, of course, it's slightly different. We're showing that we understand how to refer to time in the task statement in a slightly different way. The amount of time spent on housework rather than spent doing housework. And of course, we've already mentioned that this is in household, so we don't have to repeat that as it's repeated in the task statement. And of course, we are also referring to the time period, the same time period. So we've said over the same period. Now, of course, that is the period from 1920 to 2019. But there we go. Hopefully there you can see how we've just simply paraphrased that task statement, changing a few things, changing some of the vocabulary, but also just changing some of the sentence structurally and changing the way we're writing about the graphs and introducing them. Now this one, like I said, is quite long. Usually it will be a bit shorter than this because you're only writing about one graph or one bar chart or one table. But this shows you a nice kind of example of how we might be approaching kind of writing the introduction for task 1 of the IELTS writing test. Now, of course, in the next video, we will be moving on to writing an overview for these, well, the 2 graphs that we can see here. But for this video, all I wanted to do was really show you a nice, clear introduction that is really the kind of introduction that a very high-level student would be giving in the IELTS writing test. Now, I hope that was really helpful for you and you found the video useful. If you did, then do remember to click the like button. And if you haven't already, do subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future videos. There we go. That's the end of the video. See you again in the next one.